Hello, everybody. Welcome in to Design, Validate, Scale. This is the first episode in a 5-part Fireside chat series from Hawkridge Systems and A3D Manufacturing. I really appreciate all you joining us. We're going to give it just a few seconds here while people filter into the room, make sure everybody has a chance to join us and nobody misses any of the content. And actually, in fact, Jon, this might be a good opportunity to just touch on the relationship between Hawkridge Systems and A3D Manufacturing.
For sure. Yeah. So Hawkridge Systems and A3D Manufacturing. Well, we were a customer of Hawkridge Systems for quite a while, and quite frankly still are. Through that business-to-business relationship, we got to know each other ourselves very well, and realized that there was a huge benefit to the Hawkridge Systems customer base in terms of manufacturing services. So we fostered a strategic partnership, and for the last several years, we have been providing manufacturing services directly to the Hawkridge Systems customer base. And obviously Hawkridge Systems, being who they are, was able to negotiate some very great perks for all of you. So definitely talk to your account manager about that. And yeah, it's been a couple years in the making, and good things to come.
Excellent. And it looks like with that, the room is filling up. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Want to make sure we maximize the time here. Couple of quick introductions. Jon Toews, who you just heard from, is from A3D. We have two of my teammates here from A3D Manufacturing. So Jon, why don't you take it away with a quick intro?
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'm Jon Toews, Senior Vice President, Head of A3D Manufacturing. I've been in the design to manufacturing space for over 20 years now, spanning everything from industrial design, architecture, mechanical design. I was on the product side of the business for a long time, and obviously manufacturing space, additive and traditional. So happy to be here.
Excellent. And Michael Dymond, also from A3D. Michael, give us an intro.
Yeah, I'm Michael Dymond, product manager over here with a formal background in material science engineering. Been in the industry for about 10 years now and 6,000 plus projects delivered. So basically here as a technical resource and strategic resource to get you parts that do what you intend them to do.
And my name is David Whitten. I am the host of this episode. I'm at Hawkridge Systems. I'm an account manager. Have spent the last several years working on the software side, and I've moved over to focus primarily on the manufacturing side, so delivering manufacturing services to my customers. And we'll just really quickly, I want to touch on a couple of housekeeping items. As I said, this is the first episode in a 5-part series. If you've registered for this episode, you've registered for all 5. All of this content is also going to be available on demand. So after this episode, if you want to check back in or you want to share it with a friend or whatever the case may be, this content is going to be available. I also want to talk about the Q&A. We're going to have a live Q&A at the end of the session today. Please put your questions in the Q&A tab and not in the chat, because they do get lost in the chat as we're rolling. But you can say hello in the chat, keep things lively because we're watching, but sometimes questions get lost. Apologies. I'll apologize in advance for that. And I think, that's about it. We can kind of start diving into the content here. There is, as I said, this is the first episode of 5. The idea behind this Fireside chat series is to follow the production life cycle. So each episode kind of touches on a separate stage of the production life cycle. Today we're going to be talking about design. We're going to be talking about prototyping down the road. We're going to be talking about bridge production and production and mass production. And each episode, as you can see on the bottom there, kind of fits along with a different stage in the product life cycle. So that being said, let's dive into it. Jon, tell us what's going on in the landscape today. Why is design so important? I know it's a broad question, but
yeah, no, for sure. So obviously I'm talking to a bunch of engineers here and manufacturing professionals. So this is probably not news to you, but through my observations over the last 20 years, but especially in the last several years with advancements going on with all the new technologies, development cycles are getting shorter and time to market is more and more important. Being first to market is extremely important, but also making sure that you are building and designing parts that can sustain the progression through things like the production life cycle, and being able to bring value to your customer by still bringing value to your company through profitability are extremely important, and you're constantly juggling those different things. Obviously, the enhancements in additive manufacturing over the past several years, it's been around for a long time, but over the past several years, different materials, precision, additive is not a prototyping tool anymore. It is a full-blown production tool, if that's what the right fit is for it. And then obviously, as we all know, in the past couple of years here, supply chain resiliency is even more important. Near shoring, far shoring, domestic, all these different things are even more important today than they were 6 years ago, I guess, right? So very important. And obviously this evolving world of manufacturing ties directly into the tools that are used to do manufacturing, and those directly correlate to all of you from an engineering perspective, because you need to be designing for manufacturing from the very first stage.
And that kind of leads me to my next question a little bit for Michael. Michael, if you've run thousands of projects, if there was a design, something maybe that people overlook with regard to design, something that's important that they might not think about off the top, is there something that maybe jumps out from your perspective?
Absolutely. When each design, each part performance has a set of performance criteria, needs, requirements, everything like that. And counterintuitively, that is not my first question. The first question when we're doing a project deep dive is how many you need. You need to understand what space you live in. If you're doing quantity 10, 20 of a high performance aerospace DoD thing, that's going to be designed with a different process in mind, like CNC machining or higher fidelity 3D printing. Whereas if it's a consumer electronic, your quantities are going into the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, and you have to adjust the end manufacturing method, which dictates how you're going to design for that manufacturing method. So the biggest thing that people will overlook, even at the very beginning, is designing for your end goal in mind. You can find yourself getting kind of railroaded into designs and features that just aren't, you can't pivot them over to the end manufacturing method nearly as easily without some painful iterations to get you there.
Yeah, we've seen it. We've seen it lots of times. Is there an advantage now, as I think Jon, you touched on this, as additive has matured? Talk about maybe some of the advantages of utilizing additive as part of the early stage or at any stage in the process.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, David. Because additive is not just a prototyping tool anymore. Additive can produce end use customer parts. They're not just for jigs and fixtures or prototyping. Depending on where your company is in terms of its product's life cycle, meaning if you're just coming out with the new version of a tool, but you've been selling that widget for a decade or 5 years, and what your run rate is in terms of the customer base adopting those parts, you have a higher degree of confidence that you're going to be producing 20,000 of these. Now, if this is a brand new product, never been in the market, and you're really trying to test the waters, you don't want to go commit to a injection mold that might cost you $30,000. So it allows you to actually go to market with additive. And quite frankly, you can elongate that additive stage as long as you want throughout that production life cycle until you've built the confidence to transition into injection molding, or maybe even do a middle step where you go to cast urethane. But yeah, it's definitely given more flexibility to companies, especially companies that are running extremely lean, to be able to keep your cost profile down when you're seeding the market.
And this slide this is maybe kind of a loaded or an obvious question, but because we're talking about design, are there things that you're locked in, like you kind of are baked into the cake when you're making designs? Talk about that, either Michael or John, whichever one wants to tackle that.
You got this.
Yeah,
one.
absolutely. Yeah, no, I have seen customers get extremely far down the prototyping, or at least the design path, and thinking that we're ready to jump on into injection molding to take off their new flagship product, and they'll do one final prototype right before tooling up and only realize that that's why you don't make that feature that way, or maybe I should have done a quick mass model fit check just to make sure everything goes in together. But no, there are different encyclopedias of DFM rules, whether it's CNC machining or injection molding, and there are either features that you simply cannot make with one or the other, or that are extremely expensive and challenging to make with one or the other. So locking in your quantity, which defines your production method, which defines the DFM that you're going to incorporate, is extremely important at the very beginning.
And I think, like, as we were talking about the, is there some added flexibility or not, maybe with additive? I use additive and added in the same sentence, but that's fine. Is there some added flexibility with additive that maybe wasn't available in the past in that process?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So straight from the get-go, you can accommodate much more challenging features that you can't make in any other technology. You can really lean into performance instead of the actual design and DFM a bit more from the outset. But also, it's 2026. We have customer bases that are loud and will let their feedback be known if your initial release of your product line isn't fitting the bill. And so being able to get that initial flagship out, get that foothold, production moving, and then field that feedback and incorporate it into your design and just send a new file to the 3D printer to make your improvements and satisfy the masses is extremely nice. That agility has some very true value.
Yep. I think that's a great point. And Michael, if you could also touch on maybe some common early design mistakes that would be valuable for people who are in the early stages. That, I think, that would be a nice touch.
Absolutely. Yeah. So cutting corners is generally frowned upon at any point in the design phase, but especially with DFM. You can find yourself, like I said, kind of railroaded into a particular feature set that needs to get a complete overhaul once you're actually, I have pre-orders, I have customers, or I have a trade show to hit, and you realize you have to go back to the drawing board and do a couple more iterations, and now we're behind. Let me see. Oh, and guessing demand is really, really, really going to put you in a bad spot here, because you very well could be expecting high quantities and really leaning all of your DFM into injection molding or die casting or something like that, only to find out that now I've made for example, die cast part, but volumes are really driving me towards CNC machining, and CNC machinists hate to CNC machine and do programming for a drafted die cast part and all the surfacing and everything that's involved there. So just to kind of speak anecdotally with an example there. But yeah, from the outset, understanding what the end process is, having a good firm understanding of what your demand is going to be, so that you can go down that path. Some of them are a little more forgiving. Like if you design a part for injection molding, 9 times out of 10, that's going to be a very 3D printing friendly sort of part. So some of them can be pretty forgiving there. And we actually like that, because you can have your initial release of a product, have injection molding DFM, be a great part, and the actual move over to, to scale up with injection molding is a pretty low-hanging fruit for you.
Which is kind of, you've defined the term that we use a lot, which is hybrid manufacturing, and it's something that we think is extremely valuable. And John, maybe you want to touch on that, just the term that we use, hybrid manufacturing.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's a great question, David. So hybrid manufacturing, if any of you have heard it before, probably means 10 different things to 10 different people. The way that we use it here at A3D and at Hawkridge Systems, first of all, it's a strategy. It's not a technology. And that's really the production life cycle. And strategically looking at your product, where it is in its production life cycle, and choosing the right manufacturing process at any point in time. It also doesn't mean that you may be looking at additive for one part, because that is a part that you're going to need to maybe make iterations on more often, or it's not going to have as many of those specific parts in the field, so you don't want to injection mold that part. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't justify it. At the other point, you may have different metal parts in that assembly that the best process type is CNC. CNC is great. There's metal additive. You can get it through A3D manufacturing. However, vast majority of metal parts are still produced through CNC, and quite frankly, I don't see that changing anytime soon. It's a great technology, and it makes amazing, very, very accurate parts. So, with that in mind, when Michael is consulting with a customer, we look at not just one part, we look at the entire assembly. And just because you choose additive on one part doesn't mean that we're not going to recommend CNC on another part and potentially injection molding on another part. And the reason for that is we're picking the exact right process for that specific part at that specific point in time. And that's that hybrid manufacturing strategy that we're talking about. And it's something that we've realized a lot of companies, quite frankly, don't do that. They just, whatever you want, we'll make it for you, right? Not taking the big picture in mind. And then that customer realizes that they overspent. They bought too many parts, and now they have these things sitting on a shelf forever. We take a more long-term approach that if our customers are successful, if our customers profit more because they're actually able to go and take their products to market, invest in marketing, invest in research, and get the best products out there, then they will continue to work with us. And in turn, we'll have a lifelong partner with that customer for their future products. So that's why we see hybrid manufacturing as such an important way of doing business, but also it's really just being super consultative with our customers.
Well, I think that is a great segue into kind of wrapping things up. Again, this was episode 1. We focused on design, but this is as I said, this is a 5-part series. The next series is going to be available, or going to be airing on the 20th of August. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble reading that. All of these episodes are going to be available on demand after we go live. This episode, along with the other ones as they come, they're going to be available. And you can, if you've already registered for this episode, you don't need to register again for any of the upcoming episodes. So anyway, really appreciate John and Michael. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate everybody who attended. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us on this fireside chat. We're going to go into Q&A here. So we'll just turn that over. We'll be checking the Q&A feed here. All right, I think we have successfully transitioned into the Q&A portion here. So I'm just looking at the feed here. We have, okay, this is a good one. Half my bomb isn't a fit for additive. I've got machine 6061 brackets and a couple of injection molded housings. Is A3D print only, or can you take the traditional stuff too? Michael, John, yeah, Michael.
Michael, I can handle that one.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and just because A3D is in the name doesn't mean we just do 3D printing. Yeah, we've got a good smorgasbord of traditional manufacturing methods as well. CNC machining, injection molding, sheet metal, water jet laser cut, and cast urethane, as well as some odds and ends and all the whole suite of post processes and coatings that you can couple it, like anodize, inserts, all sorts of stuff like that. But that's kind of part of the BOM review. We go through and check to see what's a good fit based off of the kind of decision criteria and the volumes that we talked about earlier. So that's kind of part of it. Very collaborative.
And let's see here. Next question. We build hardware for aerospace and some defense programs, so traceability and export control aren't optional for us. Are there industries you concentrate in? Can you support AS9100 and ITAR controlled work?
Yeah, I'll take that one.
Outstanding question.
Yeah, we can definitely support AS9100 aerospace and ITAR. We are A3D is ISO 9001, AS9100D, and ITAR registered. So we definitely service defense and military aerospace. We also have a very heavy footprint in high tech, medical device, consumer goods, industrial equipment. So yeah, we cover a lot of different major industries, but we also do have the capability for traceability within aerospace and obviously controlling your data for any sensitive information from an ITAR perspective.
Yeah, it's worth saying too that just because your project might not be in the aerospace sector, we don't turn off being AS9100 for your project. So the same disciplines, traceability, and attention to detail carries through to your project, no matter who you are.
Very true.
True. It's a great windfall for everybody else. Oh, I saw this.
Looks like we might be having
question here, John. Somebody was asking about your mic in the chat.
Sorry, I'll be closer to it.
We try our best, but we're not audio video pros. Let's see here. Okay. This is an interesting one. I'm just looking in the chat now. I went from the Q&A to the chat. If I attend all the sessions, do you provide a certificate of completion or attendance for a manufacturing engineering portfolio? That is from Garish Patel. So we can put something together. It would be, I think, probably kind of like fairly informal, but yes, we can make something nice looking for you that you can deliver to the people who want something from you. We've done it in the past, so yes. I will email you after this, and we can open a line of communication on that. Another question from the Q&A. Our team gets manufacturing vouchers bundled with our SolidWorks through Hawkridge Systems. Excellent. But honestly, I've never used one. How do I redeem them? And is there someone I can see somewhere I can see how many we still have? So yes, it's actually, I'm the person you speak to. I am on the dedicated manufacturing services team here at Hawkridge Systems. So I used to work in the SolidWorks world, and now I work exclusively on manufacturing projects. And so it is something that it's a big part of what we are, one of the value adds that we deliver to our customer base on the Hawkridge side, the SolidWorks customers. So long story short, there's 4 of us who work exclusively on manufacturing projects. There's me, of course. One of my colleagues, his name is Wes, Maldonado. One of my other colleagues, his name is Greg Retorf, and the fourth is named Tig Sarkisian. And we can all help you with getting those vouchers uh, redeemed and talking about a project. Typically, the voucher opens up a wider discussion, which is awesome. And there's often other ways that we can, people reach out on the voucher, and then it's like, oh, we have these other parts that we're making, and there's maybe an injection molding project that they didn't know that we did. So that's always fun.
I would just mention too that if you reach out to A3D and you let us know that you're a Hawkridge customer, we can obviously get you in contact with your manufacturing service account manager. So either way, get with David or the rest of the D4. We call them the D4 team, but the dedicated manufacturing team. Or you can reach out to us and we'll get you connected to the right person. So either way, we'll get you taken care of.
Yeah, all roads lead to we will take care of you. Okay, here in the chat, there's a good question here. Do you have rules of thumb in regards to manufacturing method versus annual production quantity versus tolerance limits?
Yeah, no, very, very aptly timed. So that's going to be one of the key kind of keynotes of our upcoming segment coming up here, the actual decision-making process here. But you're absolutely right. Yeah. And I'll cliff note it here. In general, as quantity gets higher, you start looking at traditional methods of manufacture, more mass production centric, like injection molding, die casting, that kind of a thing. And so too is the case for tolerances. 3D printing has come a long way when it comes to tolerances that they can achieve, but they still don't quite contend in most cases to the traditionals like CNC machining, especially where you can start talking in tenths, or injection molding where just a few thou is commonplace. So yeah, we'll dig into that a little bit more because there's more meat and potatoes there at the next session. But yes, you certainly do kind of have a slider scale there.
Outstanding. Well, I'm gonna hang on and see if any other questions pop in, but it looks like we may be winding down. So next episode, gentlemen, I look forward to. Will you be joining me, Jon and Michael, on Thursday,
Yes.
August?
Yeah.
Is it Thursday, August 20th, right?
Yeah, can't get rid of me.
I couldn't spit that out earlier. Thursday, August 20th.
Yeah.
Additional discussion about additive and other traditional methods.
And the decision-making criteria all around them. Yeah, it is nice. One of the things that we like to, pride ourselves in is bringing a little bit of strategy, not just technical encyclopedias to the table. We do like to bring some strategy and guidance here and, consult a bit more larger picture. So looking forward to trying to put a little bit of that into this web format for you guys.
Yeah, I will not be on the next one,
Absolutely.
but I will be on the finale to kind of put some bookends on this series. But you are in good hands with Michael and David.
Absolutely. Well, I think that about wraps it up. I think we will see everybody here on the next one, and we really appreciate you all joining. I know that everybody's busy. Everybody's got a lot of important stuff to do, and time is money, so we appreciate you taking the time to spend with us and learn about what we're doing here.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thank you
everyone.
so much, everybody.